Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's my pleasure today to be here with Goleta City Councilman Kyle Richards. And I got to say that I haven't been around Goleta City Hall lately since the pandemic, but before the pandemic, I was covering it. And I got to say, this man has the greatest voice of elected officials that I have heard, just deep. And it just sounds like you should be calling baseball games or something.
Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate it.
So, Councilman Richards, how are you doing today?
I'm great. It's great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so honored that you take some time here to talk with me and the audience. And I reached out to you for a couple of reasons. One is, even though the show's called Santa Barbara Talks, I love Goleta. I'm a Goleta resident, and I grew up here. Spent a lot of my youth here, and I want to talk to you about City Goleta and all the stuff that is going on in terms of how Goleta is changing and housing, homelessness, Old Town, all the stuff that we're going to get into. And I know you're right sort of in the heart of that. And so we're going to get there. But first, Kyle, I wanted to sort of start the show talking about you and your personal story. Nationally, it's Pride Month, which recognizes and takes a moment to reflect and appreciate and pause the contributions of the LGBTQ plus community. And I wanted to talk to you about that. You are an openly gay city council member. We don't really see a lot of that in the South Coast and the county. So it's very brave of you, and you've been out and you ran. And so I wanted to talk to you about that experience. I wonder if we could just sort of lead off, Kyle, with talking to me about how you came out and how you decided that you were going to just sort of be who you are and what the challenges were in terms of doing that. So we just, talk to me a little about what your story is.
Yeah. So, first of all, just to say, coming out is a process. It's something that happens over and over and over again. And it's, I think, before I first started going through that process, it feels like, you're either in or you're out. And once you're out, then that's it. But I have a feeling that there may be some people here today listening that didn't know that I am gay, so I think it's interesting, just to think about that as a process and something that's ongoing and something that's a continual thing that for people, that are gay, a lot of times we interact with people on the street and people don't necessarily know, or it's not a thing or it's not thought about. So my story, starts, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm not originally from here, as many people, have moved here. I moved here in 97 to the area to start working at UCSB. But before that, I grew up, I was raised, all of my family still lives in Pennsylvania. Kind of rural area outside of Philadelphia, Bucks County area. And it was very, I would say, I don't know if the word conservative, or traditional, very, kind of old fashioned, very, we went to church right down the street from us. And that was our life. We had a kind of farm area that we lived in. So, for me, my experience was just going to college, going to Penn State, and just being open to a new world and really new possibilities that I hadn't thought about before. So, that was really when my coming out story started. That was 1989. That spring, and it was hard. Yeah, and I think one of the things, as I was thinking about your questions before today, is just how much things were different then and there. And then in the same way, how maybe things haven't changed in some ways. Things seem to, still be difficult and for some people, and everyone has a unique experience. So, for me, my parents didn't react very well, initially, and I'll preface this by saying, now my whole family is very supportive, and, I have a very great support network and a lot of love, but there were some difficult years, and, and if you can think back to what 1989 was like, when I first, started having this conversation with my parents, my mom, just for her, that, that meant, gay meant that I was going to get AIDS and die. That was pretty much what it felt like back then. This was before any of the treatments for HIV, and all of the media, coverage about HIV and AIDS was about equating it with being gay. So that was just that's the frame of reference that people had.
Yeah.
And my dad, very, again, traditional, very, worried about, I think, how I was going to be treated, and how that other people would react. A lot of my family's reaction was based on fear about how I would be treated. So there were hard times, but there, lots of conversations, and just kind of muddling through that. And I think for them a lot, it was worried that I was somehow now a different person, or not the person that they thought they knew. And so one thing to keep in mind with people coming out is that this is the person that they are. They're just letting you in on a little more about who they are, and that may be something that you didn't know about them. But it's not like they're a different person, or not the person maybe that you thought they were. So,
yeah, well, that's the 80s, so we're coming off of Ronald Reagan, 2 terms as president, and then first Bush as president. And it was definitely a time where the nation, by 1989, it was a little better, but definitely there was this perception that it was that if you were gay and you were a man, that it would lead to AIDS. And it took some celebrities to sort of come out and talk about their HIV diagnosis before it became an issue, where it was like, oh, we should probably invest in some research into a cure for this, since now other people are affected. Sadly, it took that.
Yeah.
I always get shaken up when I read Ryan White's obituary. I don't know if you remember him, but he had hemophilia, and he had a blood transfusion, and he contracted AIDS in the 80s. And just the discrimination that occurred toward him and his family. They would not let him go to school because they didn't know how this disease would be contracted or how it could be shared. And there was this, his news obit talks about how when his mother would go to the store, the cashiers would throw the change at her. They would not hand it to her because they didn't want to touch her. And so it was a very different era back then in terms of sharing that information. And I'm like how you said, sort of it's a process. Did you sit down at the kitchen table and tell your parents, I want you to know this? Or was it something you kind of gave signals to and kind of let them know and say they're going to figure this out on their own and then I'll confirm? Or can you talk about that? I know there are people who, for everyone it's a different experience. So there's the different methods. And so how did you sort of finally broach it with them?
Yeah, actually, they broached it with me. Really, my story with them was that they were picking me up from college to take me back home for the summer. That was that spring. They met some of my friends that I had made at the time and who were gay, and they were very, I guess, kind of stereotypical, and so you would meet these people, and I think they were making assumptions that happened to be true. I think, that my friends were gay. And so I think it just kind of planted that seed. So then a couple of weeks after we got home, my mom sat me down and, said, I have something really important to ask you. And so she asked me, and at that point, I just didn't, I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to, be evasive. And so I just, as hard as it was, I just said, well, yeah, I am. And, she started crying. She said it was the worst thing I ever told her. It was like, I was kind of hoping that if she was ready to ask the question, maybe she was ready to hear the answer. But it didn't, that was a rough time. I have to say, there were struggles, and as hard as it was for me, I have to say, there are so many people who have it so much worse, there are people, there are children who get kicked out of the house, if their parents would find out. There are people who were disowned and just, and it's heartbreaking just to hear about those stories. And and I'm lucky, I have a loving, supportive family that, that was able to stick in there with me and work through it, and not let, the stereotypes and some of the, messages, get in the way of us and our relationship.
Yeah. And what about the positive, Kyle? How did you change? What changed for you the moment you were able to sort of unload that and let your parents know? How did you, in the future, how did you move on from that? What was good about it?
Yeah, it really was a liberating experience. It's an experience that it's freeing. It allowed me to shed a lot of guilt or fear or whatever worry about people finding something out about me, and it's so much easier when you're able to just be open and honest and and live a congruent with what your feelings are and your values, and be open about it. I mean, that's an incredibly freeing experience, and I'm really glad to have gone through that, and to continue to go through that, because that really allowed me to be, it feels, to me, it's about integrity and about just being honest with myself and with other people, and not having to feel like I need to hide that, and I really do believe that led to more, deeper relationships, friendships, the people that I am, have relationships with, then know that about me, and support me and respect that. And so that to me is very valuable, to be able to have those more meaningful kinds of relationships.
Yeah. And it's such a product of our era too, the sort of your coming out story in 2022. Do you think, Kyle, that it even has to be a thing? Like, do you have to tell people, or is it possible just to live your life, and people who need to know, and if you don't need to know, you don't need to know, it's none of your business? It's different for everybody, but do you think we've advanced to the point where we can just not even care unless it matters to us in any specific way?
I'd like to think so, and in some ways maybe yes. There are many days that I don't think about it, or think about what people think about me, that happens. But there are, there's blatant homophobia that still exists, and I'll just mention, there was, you may remember, Ethan Bertrand, elected official from Isla Vista, who got harassed on State Street, walking around downtown. And, part of that harassment was based on there were slurs, that were used against him. It happens, it can be blatant, it can be subtle, there's mumbling under people's breaths, there's talking behind people's backs. I mean, that still happens. So, in one way, but in another way, it doesn't seem to affect me as much. I feel like things, part of the reason I moved here to California and to Goleta, and I think this speaks to the area, and to the people that are here, is that it is a very accepting place. And I think overall, people are very open, and it doesn't seem to be a large impediment. I'll just throw in, when I was running, my first election was in 2016. That was a concern for me. I was thinking like, okay, I don't know what any opponent might try to dig up, or what they might try to use against me, and or someone that just doesn't like you, might want to try to make an issue out of something like that, and I was aware of it, as I was concerned about it. I thought about it. I didn't let it stop me, but it was on my mind. Of course, yeah. These things happen, and more often, I should say, than the outright homophobia is just the kind of subtle heterosexism, you can call it. This assumption that someone is heterosexual unless they tell you otherwise. And so I get that a lot. People ask me, you check into a hotel room or something, and they want to know, is your wife with you? Or, a lot of questions about your wife, I get that. And it's like, no, but, I have a husband, I can, I'll mention that. And I don't do it in a way to try to, like be mean about it or to throw it in their face or whatever you want to say, but just to, be real and be honest. Like, no, that's not me, but here, this is me.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for taking some time to watch this interview with Goleta City Councilman Kyle Richards. We're going to get right back to this great conversation in just a minute. But first, I want to bring you just something quick from our sponsor, the Walla Festival. We're going to have a conversation with Wade Cooper, Paula Fan, who are the founders of this event. It's coming up Saturday, June 11th, starts at 4 p.m., and they're going to tell you all about it. So let's check out this short conversation with them, and then we're going to come right back to Kyle Richards and keep talking about all the great stuff happening in the city of Goleta. Thanks a lot. Hey, I'm here with Wade Cooper and Paula Fan, and they're going to talk a little bit about this incredible event coming up on Saturday, June 11th, to benefit the Sarah House. It's called the Walla Festival. Wade, Paula, you got a big deal going on. Can you take a couple of minutes to talk about what this event is about and what it means to the community?
So Walla was originated, or that idea originated on the idea that we just never wanted to get married, but we also wanted to, throw a big party. And on top of that, we also just didn't need another toaster. So we just wanted to find a way to make it, make something out of it. So because we're board members of Sarah House, we wanted this to be a benefit concert for Sarah House.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Sarah House. Yes.
Sure. Sarah House is an incredible place. It's really a one-of-a-kind hospice facility in the country. It is a social model hospice house at the corner of Las Positas and Modoc that serves people who a lot of times would not otherwise be able to afford hospice. So we've had everything from folks who have mental health issues who can't be placed in other hospice houses, to homeless veterans, to incredible locals who just families need some help. The house originated in the 80s as AIDS hospice, because in the 80s, during the AIDS scare, a lot of hospice facilities would not let AIDS patients into their hospice facilities. And so Sarah Shoresman opened Sarah House as a means to allow those folks who were dying of AIDS to have the level of care and love that they needed and deserved in their final days. And from there, it's obviously with sort of the AIDS scare dying off a little bit, we've expanded our mission, but still continue to serve folks who are living with HIV/AIDS, as well as the greater Santa Barbara and really California community.
That's amazing. Can you talk about what the festival is and what people can expect who are going to participate?
Yeah.
So we're going to have 3 bands. First is going to be a band from Austin called the Greyhounds. Second is going to be Crush Club, and they're from New York. But lastly, it's going to be the most favorite local band, Spencer the Gardener. So,
with some special guests.
Right. And then also we have 2 food trucks. One is Moni's, Santa Barbara, which is going to be awesome. And then Chef's Touch Catering, which he actually does a lot of his catering in Los Olivos, and think of like the best barbecue.
He's got a sweet barbecue rig. He's coming down. They're smoking meats all day. We're going to have brisket, ribs, all the barbecue stuff we're going to have there. It's going to be awesome. And then
of course, Criminal,
yep,
which is affiliated with Your Choice, but they're going to be donating all of their amazing, delicious ice cream. So
awesome flavors, local artisanal ice cream. He's got Thai iced tea Oreo, which if you haven't had it, you got to get it while you're there. It's to die for. Unbelievable. Yeah.
So this sounds like a really amazing effort and community festival. Can you two talk about why this was so important as a way for you two to sort of celebrate you being partnered? Why? There's a million ways you could celebrate that and show that, but why is this issue with Sarah House so important to you? And why are you on the board? Can you talk a little bit about why this matters to you so on such a personal level?
Yeah. So, I mean, a few years ago, both my mom and grandfather passed away at another hospice facility in Santa Barbara. And at some point I was just playing basketball. I met this guy, Chris, and he said he had a kind of a similar story. And he said, hey, come down to Sarah House. I'm on the board. I think you'd really be interested in it. Check it out. And I went down there, and just first day I was there, I said, whatever I can do, let me know. This is unbelievable, to provide the same level of care, but for people who can't afford it. I just thought this is really God's work, and it's an incredible place. And I kind of dragged Paula into it. We actually together, we emceed our last annual event.
Fundraising event 2019.
Yeah. So we've been involved for a while.
But in addition to that, I wasn't really familiar with hospice care at all. And then just to, for someone who works in the medical industry, there's always need for especially low income patients. So giving them access to that sort of care is really important. And then when you listen to the stories and the people who work, like Paloma, who is a huge part of Sarah House, listening to how patient and helpful and understanding she is, it's to another level of empathy that I wish I can attain. But it's incredibly just like an angelic story that it's just great to be a part of, and to benefit the community.
I just want to say Paula's the most empathetic person I know, so don't sell yourself short.
Okay, well, this sounds like a tremendous event. It's Saturday, June 11th. Give us the details. What time does it start? How do people find out about it? The website, everything.
Yeah, starts at 4 p.m. Spencer goes on at 5, so be there early. We got a full bar, full bar cocktails. We got some signature cocktails, craft cocktails going on. We've got a VIP area.
And if you want to find out more information, there will be a Sarah House booth there too.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
always donate. But the website is www.wallafest.com. Check it out. You can check out her story, check out more information about Sarah House, but you can also donate and purchase tickets there.
Yep, wallafest.com. And I'm sure Josh will put a link down.
Insert link here.
Down here.
Of course. Right. Anything for Wade and Paula. So great. Thank you for your time and good luck with your event.
Thanks, Josh. We'll see you there.
So Kyle, how did you get into to government? What was your story? How did you get from college and eventually going into Goleta and moving into Goleta and running for city council? Was that your dream one day? Was I want to be in the good land or a little small town and be on the city council? Or how did you get there?
Yeah, I have that was a hard decision for me. I have to say, I have not always dreamed of being in political office. I have not always thought or really, before 2016, which is the year that I ran, I had not even considered that I would ever do that. That was not something that was on my radar. At the time, I was serving on the Goleta Parks and Recreation Commission. That was the commission was established in 2013, and so I had been on it for a few years, and that was really where I started, paying more attention to what was happening in Goleta and things that I was noticing, and that kind of like maybe laid the groundwork and planted some seeds for me. But growing up, I think from my experience, I've always felt a need to serve the community. I think participate in volunteer projects. I was involved with Rotary as a kid, and just wanting to do, pick up trash. I mean, there were all kinds of things that I would do to try to just be. I think that was instilled in me and from my family, from my community, that was important. That your community is important. That you want to be an active and contributing member to whatever community that you live in. And I brought that with me here. That's something that, after living here, I moved here in '97, so I've seen many changes. I was not born or raised here, but I've been here long enough to see the place transform. And, I grew up, I should mention, where I came from is a pretty rural area. And now when I go back, I see it changing there. There are farms that are now developments, and a lot of barns that used to be there are now bed and breakfasts, things like that. And it's changed. And so I felt this kind of desire to hold on to those aspects of a community that I appreciate, that I value, and that I think, are worthy of being retained, but as time marches on, we can't stop the clock, things are going to change. I don't think the idea is that we just make it, like it was 200 years ago or whatever, but I think we have to be thoughtful about those elements of our community that we want to hold on to and what's important to us.
Yeah. What did your parents do?
So my mom was a school teacher. Well, she went to college and was a school teacher. And then when she started having children, then she stopped that. And my dad and his dad were grave diggers. That was our family profession. And my brother was a grave digger too. So
holy cow.
Yeah. And this is a, rural community. So there were probably like 30 different cemeteries in the area that he would get called to go and dig graves. So, he was a self-employed, it was his own business. He took out loans to buy the equipment and the backhoes and the trucks and worked 6 or 7 days a week usually, so yeah, he was a hardworking guy. And is that a lucrative industry? No, I don't know. I didn't never felt that way to us. We were pretty, middle class, I would say. It was a pretty, we were okay. We were taken care of. It wasn't it wasn't a big money making thing.
Did you ever help Dad out on a job?
All the time. Yeah, I was out there driving dump trucks and helping dig and replanting the sod and laying tombstones down, and all that stuff. Yeah,
that's a story a lot of people are not going to have in common with you.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how relatable this is to a lot of people.
Wow, that's amazing. So you went to school for what? What did you get your degrees in?
It was I got a BS in environmental studies at Penn State, and then I stayed there for grad school, and I got a master's in education as well.
Okay. And did UCSB bring you out here, or how did you find Goleta?
I took a stop up, and I worked in San Jose for a year at San Jose State, and then I didn't really like it there. It was too big of a city, and I was looking for a smaller community, something that felt more familiar to me. And I found my way here. I wasn't really planning. I didn't look to come to Santa Barbara or UCSB or Goleta, but I came, and I thought I'd stay for a few years and then head back, but I grew roots, and I established myself here, and built connections, and makes it real hard to leave.
Yeah. If when you grow up here, you tend to think, I can't wait to get out, go see the real world. Yeah. Then you go see the real world, and you're like, I need to get back. I didn't know how lucky I had it. So, if you can do that, a lot of people come back. I worked in the Bay Area for a couple of years too. San Jose City Hall. I was a City Hall reporter. So when I'm breathing down your neck in aggressive reporter mode, asking you the tough questions, and you're like, who is this guy? I had to do it in the big city, so I'm used to being tough on elected officials, so but you're right. The Bay Area, man, you could go a place, that's 5 miles away, and it takes you 45 minutes because there's so much traffic, right? Yeah. So you get to Goleta, you said in 1997, is that when, what do you remember about that time? And we're going to get into the present in a second, but so is Gersh Park, Camino Real, is that built yet? Probably
no. I remember a field. I remember an open space in that corner. I do remember that. Yeah, that was built soon after that. I moved here, so I sold
none of that housing that we have, right?
Yeah.
So what stood out to you about the community at that time when you sort of looked around and said, I like this place?
Well, even then it felt very unaffordable, in terms of like trying to stay. I was lucky. My first couple jobs at UCSB included housing, and that helped a lot. I was a resident hall director in San Nicolas Hall and out in San Ynez Apartments. So I had jobs that provided that. So I was, again, very fortunate. Of course, the natural beauty, the weather, how I love the outdoors, and that's something that I grew up with, and it's really easy to find that here. And any day of the year, it's great to be outside here.
Yeah.
So, and the people, it's like people that are here just seem happy and they seem to really like being here, so I love the community.
Yeah. So so 97, so less than 25 years, we've got hotels, right? Stork, Hollister, we've got more housing. We have Camino Real, we've got Gersh Park, which is a great place for recreation in town.
Yeah.
And we have Target, right? We had Kmart there for years. And finally,
Yeah, I remember the former campaign, if you will, to try to get the Target before that didn't pass, but we got our Target eventually, though.
Yeah, was they going to put it where the athletic club is, or the gym there? Yeah, that was one of the sites, and that didn't work out. And now we have it, and it's like, how did we ever live without it? It's just like, you want to see somebody go to Target. So talk to me about how the conversation started that you wanted to maybe run for Goleta City Council. Did somebody approach you, or did you approach maybe the Democratic Party, or how did that get going?
I was following the news, and I think the things that you were just talking about, the growth, the development, and the traffic, and and I think I was just concerned about what I was seeing happening in the community. Like, that was something that I was noticing, and I felt a connection to the community that I found when I got here, and I could already feel that changing. And I felt like I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to be involved and be a part of that decision process, and help plan the growth of a community in a more thoughtful way, in a way that preserve the quality of life for us here. But we need more housing, we know that, but we have to do it in a way that's thoughtful and reduces the impacts on the existing community and doesn't just overwhelm a place. So like I said, I was on the Parks and Rec Commission. I had attended a couple workshops that there was this Goodland Coalition that had put on a couple series of workshops about running for city council. And it was, like just kind of informational type things. And I went there, honestly, I really, in my mind, was thinking like, oh, I want to just go and check it out. I wasn't like thinking that I was going to be that person, but I thought, oh, I would meet other people that are also concerned. I thought of it as a way to, just be involved and to find other people of, that I could relate to and share those concerns. And really, I was hoping there was one person I met that I was like really thinking like, oh, he'd be great. I want to, put my support behind him. He'd be somebody that I would want to support. And then later found out that he chose not to run for city council. And then I was in this kind of dilemma, like, well, somebody needs to do something. It really was a lot of soul searching for me, like this feeling of like somebody needs to step up, somebody needs to do something. And I didn't want it to be me. I honestly don't really crave the spotlight. I don't enjoy a lot of attention a lot of times. So I just kind of had to reach within myself and push myself to do something that didn't feel very comfortable. And it really, I have to say, like, that decision that I made to run was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Just like, do I want to do this? Do I want to put myself out there? Do I want to be in the public eye and bring on all what that may mean? And and that was hard. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to do that part of it, but I wanted something to happen. I wanted something to change. I wanted to be, doing something that I felt was needed. So.
Yeah. So who was that person who didn't run? You're going to out them here or no? I've told many people. It was Bob Miller. It was Robert Miller, who then I later appointed as my planning commissioner. So okay, City College, right?
And then I encouraged him to run for the position at City College as well. So yeah, he did that, and yeah. So I'm glad to see that he continued to be involved, and is still a contributing person in our community. So yeah.
Yeah. So your story is really a amazing one. Like, here you are, you're just sort of in the community and you care, and you have this sort of interest and background in public service, and you're paying attention to what's going on in the community, and you decide, let me go to this meeting, and maybe I'll meet other people, like-minded people who are concerned about civic discourse, and all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe I'm the one who should run and do it, and a lot of people have those ideas, but it's hard to get elected. It takes all of this combination of money, message, organization, timing. And
those were the things that I was really worried about too. I didn't know anything about campaigning. I didn't know anything about what it would take. I mean, I didn't know how much I would have to raise, any of that. I was not that tuned in. I wasn't that connected to anything. I was a registered Democrat, but I was not involved in Democratic politics at that time. I wasn't, in the party, apparatus or anything. I later then I did, that was one of the first endorsements I did seek, and that was really helpful. That was instrumental for me, to get their support and their vote of confidence, that I, was something, I offered something that represented something that they could support and that they would get behind. And I appreciate that, and that, and then other endorsements, and then it kind of fell in, and yeah.
And in many ways, you're a prototype Democrat Party candidate, I just kind of got a lot of qualities, traits, and skills that are in sync with the Democratic Party platform. Did you ever do anything with your voice, Kyle? Am I crazy here? Am I making this up? Should you not have been a broadcast journalist? Has anyone ever told you this before?
No, I try singing, and but I don't know that my singing voice. Maybe I should. I should have tried broadcasting, maybe, but yeah. No, never done anything like that professionally. No. I am friends with Jim Sirianni, though, who I think has a great radio announcer voice. You may know Jim from the radio, anyway. So I always tell him he's got a great voice.
Yeah, you should do audiobooks if you ever need to make money on the side. Just but let's talk about Goleta. Okay, so you've seen it change, and obviously I'm a Goleta resident, and Stork and Hollister. I mean, every time I drive through there, I'm always like, I can't believe I've got to wait 5 minutes. I used to only wait 1. No, I know it's like privileged problems here, but there's an impact here in terms of transportation that we see, particularly because we're near the university, and this part of Goleta is very congested and impacted. Los Caneros development, Hollister Village development, lots of new housing. What's your take on the city of Goleta? Are we done for a while with new housing? We really can't be, because we've got the state pressure, but where are we going to put it? What are your thoughts here looking out, and where do you want to see housing go?
Well, we have a project in the pipeline right now, Heritage Ridge. So that's at the Planning Commission right now, and that's already been through the Design Review Board. That's
Los Carneros area, right? Yeah,
right near City Hall. Yeah, at Los Carneros, right where the freeway is. So that's like, I forget how many, 300 and some units, a third of which are affordable. So I have to say that that's a nice, a perk of that project. I'm still following it, and I know that there are some issues regarding environmental concerns and its proximity to some environmentally sensitive habitat area. Hopefully, I believe that we can work those out. So we're looking at that. I think, then that area, that was part of our general plan that had been laid out as part of, what was kind of looking to, to see housing. I think we need to focus a lot more on, different types of alternative transportation and having ways that people can get around out of their car, whether it's all, the bus system, bicycle infrastructure. We passed our bicycle pedestrian master plan a few years ago, and we're taking on some new projects, getting people out of their cars. We're looking at our train depot project, and hopefully, providing opportunity for commuters commute to Goleta. You know, a lot of the traffic concerns that we have are because we don't have enough housing here. And so we have people driving, 30, 40, 50 miles to work here. And then, that adds more traffic on our roads as well. So, I think getting the people here in a way that's, different alternatives out of their car is going to help. So, but you're right. I think we're getting to the point where we're going to have to look at infill projects. We don't have a lot of open space anymore that we're going to be looking to put in large development projects. That we just don't have that space. There are a few small places that have been identified, but not a whole lot at this point. We did look at our ADU, issues, and I think that may be a piece of the puzzle, trying to encourage more housing by having more ADUs, and that will spread out the kind of housing. It won't concentrate it into any specific area, but it'll allow it to grow, and it will also allow people to retain their house and add supplemental income as people age, and it provides an opportunity for them to perhaps downsize and rent out the main house. I mean, there's a lot of different models, or rent to, use it as rental income, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of different pieces. And I think at this point, we're kind of looking at all the pieces. We need to figure out any kind of way that we can to add this housing wherever we can. We're going through our regional housing needs assessment. This is the state mandated process. So we're looking at these questions right now. These are the things that we're looking at. And I know one of the ideas that was thrown out there would be looking at commercial zoning and perhaps allowing or encouraging more residential in commercial areas. I haven't really studied that much, but I'd like to learn more about it and see what the Planning Commission discussions look like, and what our community thinks about that. But that may be a possibility as well. Some mixed use housing on commercial area.
Yeah, and I told Council Member James Carriaco this is, you guys will always have my vote as long as you never develop that Bishop Ranch area, which is between Los Caneros and Stork. Yep. I love looking at that. It's open space. It's just rolling hills. If that's ever housing, I think that's going to be the end for a lot of locals in Goleta.
Yeah, well, and thank goodness for our Measure G 2012 that was passed. That requires agricultural parcels of 10 acres more to go to a vote of the people to develop that. So that was a huge win for our community to preserve that. It doesn't mean that it won't or can't ever be developed, but if it does, it would have to be part of some kind of larger land swap, or putting a big portion of it aside. So it's not to say that no development will ever happen on that, but if it does, it will be something that the community will have to support in order to make it pass.
Yeah, and that's going to be a long time from now, I think, if that ever happens.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about Old Town Goleta. We have Goleta sort of the tale of two worlds. We've got so much commercial development. The Camino Real is newish. Hollister Village is new. Where Target is, that store is new. The shopping center's been around. And so there's a lot of retail activity going on. In Old Town Goleta, we do have retail. We have a lot of mom and pop restaurants. We have businesses that serve the community there, the residents who live there. And obviously other people go in town to shop at various, Santa Cruz Market or any of the other places there. And it looks kind of like it has always looked, right? It's sort of stuck in time to some degree. It's very busy. It's very successful, I think, in terms of its commercial retail base. But it doesn't look like, some other recently redeveloped areas could look like. I was going to say State Street, but State Street kind of looks like a mess right now too. But, it looks like it's kind of stuck in time. And I know Goleta's talking about making some changes to the streets there. Can you talk a little bit about just big picture? What's Old Town going to look like possibly down the road in terms of the infrastructure?
Yeah, well, so let me start with saying, the infrastructure really, we need to lay the infrastructure and have that established to make, as a foundation to grow on. And that's what we have been doing over the last several years. There's a long list of projects that I can go through. Johnny D. Wallace Park, right at the top, our sidewalk infrastructure project. And I don't know if how much time you spend or your viewers spend going through the residential area, between Hollister and the freeway, the railroad track. But before we finished our project, many blocks in that neighborhood did not have sidewalk on either side of them. And now, every block in Old Town has sidewalk on at least one side. So without a sidewalk, you can imagine that, we'd have parents, pushing baby strollers down in the middle of the street. We'd have seniors, with walkers walking down in the middle of the street. I mean, because there was no sidewalk. So these are the kinds of things, the infrastructure, the restoration of the fields in back of the community center. There's a field there by the Boys and Girls Club that we redid last year. Yeah. These are the kinds of things that kind of lay the foundation
by the pickleball fields.
Yeah, and the pickleball right next to the pickleball court. And that good for them that this is like a grassroots organization of pickleball community people that just banded together, and there was this upswelling of support for what they do. I mean, we did have some concerns about noise that we're hoping that we've addressed, or that we're going to monitor from the on the impact on the local neighbors there. But it's vibrant. If you go by there, now you can look in and see that there's a community of people, and these are people that are coming into Old Town, having coffee at Old Town Coffee and eating at the restaurants, and and contributing to the economy, as well as creating community at the same time. So that these are the kinds of things that we've been focusing on. Our community center itself, we have an $8 million project that we're about to embark on, and this will just be seismic and ADA improvements. So it might not be very visible. It's not gonna, at this stage. I know $8 million is big, but it's the bones of the building that we need to concern ourselves with, and making sure that the infrastructure there, that we have a lot to build on from there. And we're about to go into an Old Town visioning process. And I'm really excited about this, because I think this will get to some of the things that you're talking about, more like the aesthetics of Old Town, and we may look, I don't know what will be on the table, but, we may want to consider some design, guidelines. I know of somebody from the Audubon Society that's been working on a mural project that wants to put, different murals on different buildings. I think, most of them are privately owned buildings, so we need to get some buy-in from the owners, but we already did get that from Alfie's, when it was Alfie's right by the community center. They agreed to allow part of the mural that's on that wall, that was on their private property. So there's a model for that. There's a mural that's on the side of the Santa Cruz Market, so I think, these are the kinds of things that will help, Old Town. We have the roundabout infrastructure project that's and along with that, we're looking at the Eckville extension, so that will connect Kellogg and have another alternative route. And this is really important because it will provide an alternative for people going through Old Town if you want, to get from one side to the other. Right now, Hollister's pretty much the main way to get from one side to the other, but having one come out at Eckville, which is right over near the industrial area, right off of Fairview, and connect to Kellogg, that will provide access. Anyone coming from the airport, it provide access to the UPS trucks that come right off of Pine, that they won't have to be going through, and Santa Barbara Airbus. These are some businesses in that area that will be able to, use these alternative routes, to get them off of the main drag that on Hollister. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of cosmetic and aesthetic improvements that we can look at that would really help. Another one that we're looking at with our Complete Streets project is wider sidewalks. That I think would be a big boon for the businesses, to be able to have some, patio sidewalk areas, maybe some benches or some things that, invite people to spend more time, and to linger, like that, instead of having people come into Old Town and just do a shopping at one, at Larry's Autos and then leave, maybe they come and then they get coffee, or they stop at a restaurant, or they do a couple things, while they're there, and providing more of an experience that people can, come and spend some time there.
Yeah, that's great. It's so many things when you list them that Goleta has done and is doing to just sort of make the community more inviting for a lot of people. Is that angled parking narrowing from 4 lanes to 2, 1 in each direction, still a proposal? Is that still on the table?
Yeah, we're looking at this next week. So this is on our agenda for Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, good, timely question. There's 3 options, and this is what we're pursuing right now is an interim restriping project. And so this was we have a complete streets project that was the one that I mentioned that will eventually widen the sidewalks and put in some more hardscaping and more permanent types of things. But this project that we're looking at is more of an interim. So it's kind of like we're putting our, we're going to test the waters and see and the great thing is that if it just doesn't work, it will provide an opportunity for us to reevaluate it and to make additional changes, or maybe go back or do something different, so because it really is just going to be paint on the ground and maybe a few planters and some other things. But the angled parking is there's 3 proposals that we're looking at. I think angled parking is a part of 2 of them. All of the proposals we're looking at will add a bike lane, a designated bike lane through Old Town. And if you think about it, the State Street Hollister corridor, all the way from the pier to the Bacara, this is basically the only area along that whole strip that you don't have a designated bike lane. This is an area where, as a bike rider, you're expected to ride in the street, with car doors that are opening from the parked cars and cars trying to pass you. And, I'm a bicyclist and I ride this regularly. It's my neighborhood. It's scary. It's scary sometimes. And I certainly, wouldn't, recommend parents having their children to do this. I mean, that would be scary. If I had a kid, I don't think that I would, I wouldn't feel very comfortable with that. And, the Old Town, the business, commercial, cultural center of our city should be open to everyone. We should feel comfortable having our children ride their bikes through this area, and so I think adding a bike lane is really a number 1 priority, just to make it safer for everyone. There may be some pain, in reducing the lanes from 4 to 2. So we are looking at other things, like, for example, timing the lights, so that they're timed so that the traffic, keeps going. There's some other, we'll be looking at some planters and some other improvements, and hopefully that will help signage. But yeah, we'll see, and the other thing is that other Equil extension, when that eventually is available, that provides an opportunity for people to bypass it. The unfortunate thing is that won't be done just yet. That's still a couple of years before that project will be completed. But we'll see. I'm eager to hear from people. We're getting emails, and we'll be having a hearing on Monday and collecting feedback and listening to the community, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, and it was one of the proposals that back in angled parking, like the Santa Barbara has by the beach. That seems like a challenge. I don't know. If there's a bicycle, I don't know. We'll see how it works. But
yeah, and that is one of the options. And then another option, actually, the one that staff in the report is recommending, and I'm not sure how I feel about this just yet, so we'll see, but would actually put angled parking in the middle of the street. So both sides of the street, would have angle parking. And if you've been to Pismo, Price Street in Pismo is set up this way. So, and that proposal would actually add like 70 parking spaces to Old Town. So that would be a nice benefit. And that one would also separate the bike lane away from the cars as much as possible. It keeps the bike lane closest to the sidewalk. And then, but I know there are some concern about, and I have some questions about what that would look like having parking in the middle. So again, there's a lot. No decisions have been made. We're still, we're listening to people right now, and we're going to have a good discussion on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at those maps. That sounds way too risky for me. No, we'll see. But I do like the bike path and the pathway between Elwood and Camino Real there, the sidewalk extension of the bike path. I mean, that's great. It's on one side of the street, and it's just so safe if you're, a kid or walking, or it's a multi-use path. That's really great. So,
and that reminds me, one other project in Old Town I didn't mention that we have funded that we're moving forward on is the bike path that will connect Old Town at Johnny D. Wallace Park, and it'll go along San Jose Creek and come up on Calle Real on north of the freeway. So it'll follow the creek, go underneath the railroad tracks, underneath the freeway, and come up right around where Maravilla is. And I'm very excited about that. As a resident of Old Town, I think it'll connect, north and south of the freeway and provide, and also provide real direct access for people that live north of the freeway to take the bike path, and eventually it'll end all the way down at Goleta Beach. So they'll be able to do a straight shot all the way down there.
That I'm interested in seeing what that looks like. Let's talk about other stuff in Goleta. You had mentioned, is there a sales tax increase proposed, and for what? What's that all about?
So, as you know, the city of Goleta has a revenue neutrality agreement with the county. So the 1% of sales tax that the city would otherwise get, we share with the county. And so we only get a portion of that. So, and the city has a lot of unfunded priorities. There's a lot of things that the city is planning to do that we want to do. There's Fire Station 10 that we haven't, figured out our financing for that yet, and a lot of other priorities. We have over $100 million of unfunded, things on our capital improvement project list that we're looking for, and so a sales tax would help us, fill in some of these things. And we haven't decided yet. So when this came before the council 2 years ago, we need a supermajority to get it on the ballot. And at that point, we had 3 of the 5 of us that voted to support putting it on the ballot. But we need 4. So we're going to be looking at it again. We've gone through a lot of discussions about what different revenue options there are. The sales tax is one of them, but we looked at other ones. We looked at cannabis tax and, changing or increasing that. We've looked at utility user tax and there's business taxes. There's a lot of other ones that we looked at. This one seems to be the one that would be the most feasible and the most provide, the kind of funds that we're looking at needing. So we'll be having a discussion about that soon. I think maybe that might be on our meeting next week as well. And our discussion will be just whether to put it on the ballot or not. So we're not voting whether or not to implement the tax. We're voting on whether or not we're going to let the voters decide, and that was my argument last time, is that, whether or not I support it or think that we should have it, I think the voters should have an opportunity to decide that. So that's what, hopefully we'll be looking at that and getting that on this year.
Well, Kyle Richards, I really appreciate your time and taking an hour here out of your busy day to talk about all of these really important Goleta issues. They call it the good land, and rightfully so, because it is doesn't get as much attention as Santa Barbara, but we live here, so that's what matters, right?
Sometimes it bothers me that we don't get the attention that Santa Barbara gets, but a lot of times I'm really happy that we don't.
Every time I send you an email, you're like, I'm glad.
Yeah, keep the focus on Santa Barbara. We're just doing our thing. Our community loves it here, and that's what we care about. So
yeah, no, but I mean, I think the message is that Goleta does a lot of good stuff. It does a lot of the same stuff Santa Barbara does. It's a smaller population, of course, but we're right in the center of the universe too. You know, we got the university right here, and we got the airport, and we're Goleta, and we got all this development and tech. We didn't even
Thriving
talk about
tech
that.
industry. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, all of that. So
We have a lot going for us. Yeah.
And I know you don't do the Lemon Festival. I think that's the chamber. I'm not sure,
Chamber.
but I'm
Yeah.
hoping the Lemon Festival comes back because that's.
I believe it is. I heard that at Gersh Park meeting that they're going to be having it again this year. So
Yeah. So maybe I'll run into you out there when that happens. But
Well,
thanks
thanks
a
so
lot,
much,
Kyle.
Josh. It's great to be with you today. Thanks a lot for the time to do this.
Yeah. Have a great day. Take care.